All right.
I think we're live on all the things now.
You'd think all the hair was gone, but it's still up. All right, we up and running?
I think so.
Can we verify?
Let's see. Facebook. Yeah, I think we're good on everything.
All right. Welcome to the 034 No BS live chat. Zero bullshit Q&A.
Zero things.
Wait, we platinum hour?
More and more platinum by the day.
I'm Javad Shadzi, and this is Nate Stewart. We're here to answer all your questions about all things 034 Motorsport. We take a no BS approach to responding. We like to be very direct and to the point when possible. It's funny, on YouTube, about once a week, somebody like tries to call us out for not answering the question, and then they explain all the ways we didn't, and then I just go and I say, at 45 seconds, we answered your first question. You know,
just like, recap through it.
People just don't watch the videos. Yeah. So, if there's a future you out there who thinks we didn't answer the question, I think we pride ourselves in very thorough answers.
And our guys go through after the fact and will chapterize and really timestamp up the video to help. If you feel like your question wasn't answered, or maybe you missed some of the stream. They do a really good job of kind of summarizing it all and making it accessible.
Well, it's almost always somebody didn't get the answer they wanted.
There's that. Or we can't get to all the questions, but we do try to get through.
No, it's never that. It's always
we've always nailed. Yeah.
Oh, way to cop out answering the question. It's like, dude, we answered it. This is the answer.
Yeah. And
I don't know if you didn't like the answer, but that's the answer.
Yeah. So many questions are gonna get bullshit answers usually on the internet. I think they're expecting that, where we can't often give a concrete, definitive, like, this is the problem or this is the solution. It's very nuanced and it's wishy-washy because it has to be. Like, that's, you can't, with the amount of information we might have or the circumstances around it.
Yeah.
You often can't answer with concrete statements. We kind of have to help you find the answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here for, to cut through the BS, not give you the BS answer. All right, we got questions pouring in, so you guys figured out how to do it. Someone
just said shout out to the Nick or whoever is getting the timestamps up so quickly in this live stream. Yeah, we tried.
Yeah,
and it's not Nick.
That's John.
Yep.
Oh, Justin. No. Okay. Well, it's just been delegated.
It's just
wonderful.
I don't think Nick ever did it. I think
he was always subletting it out. All right.
Yeah, no, Nick did. It was always Sean, and then Sean.
We get new escape routes out. Nice. How to get out of here?
Yeah. I need an engine mount for my C7 S6. What's the difference between yours and the stock one? Should I expect any vibrations with yours? So our density line mounts are almost always solid rubber filled mounts, where we re-engineer the rubber and the stiffness of the mount to be much more reliable than the factory mounts and also offer higher performance. We typically offer a street density and a track density. In the case of the 4.0 V8 S6 C7 application, we currently only offer street density because we found that the performance was very good, and at this time most customers probably aren't wanting something stiffer. And then we have our track sport billet mounts for the people who want a really stiff mount. The factory mount uses a softer lower durometer rubber. It is filled with type of hydraulic fluid and valve system to act sort of like as a shock absorber as well as a mount. The factory mounts are very cush. They offer zero vibration at any time under any condition. However, they allow a lot of engine movement, and they typically fail around 50,000 miles on average. So if you'd like to go to the web page for this product, we show the differences. We explain in detail the difference between our mount and the factory mount. We are not just selling a factory mount or a factory replacement mount. Our mount is much better. The feedback on these mounts in this particular application is that there's essentially no NVH, especially after a break-in period of about a month. It's possible you could feel a little bit more vibrations, say at idle, or when you're in reverse or something like that. But under 99% of all driving conditions, there's no additional NVH. And that's something that we design and curate in these mounts. When we call it street density, the vibration is typically very low to not noticeable. We also have NVH ratings on each product, and we explain in detail the amount of NVH that you could expect. All right. So yeah, go check out the product page. If you have any more questions, let us know. They are the best motor mount option on the market by far for like a street driven car where NVH is of concern. Yes.
No, I was just reading to check on some of the comments here.
Okay. I have a 2020 Golf R in Australia, DSG, non-GPF, fitted with air intake and res delete. Do the Stage 1 93 octane files work without problems in Australia, given we rate our fuel as 98 RON? How important are bolt-on mods like the res delete, mainly because I want to put the exhaust back to standard, given I hate the sound?
Okay. We've got a lot of guys down there running it without any issue. No, the 93 and 98 RON files have been worked out really well. So wouldn't have any problems going between them down there. Bolt-on mod stuff, res delete, you can run it or not. That's just a sound choice.
There's no tuning impact to deleting the resonator.
Intake and intercooler would be the two. Again, you don't need specific tunes for them, but they will help the motor operate more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and feel free to reach out to our dealer VAG in Australia. They handle all of our sales and tuning in Australia, and they'll be happy to advise you on it's VAG parts officially. Yeah. On the EA839, does it truly matter whether you stick to 020 or 5W40? We talked about this last week. It's like a weekly question.
Yeah.
Our consensus, what we always say is it doesn't really matter. But under high load conditions, like for our Stage 3, we do request and require 540, which is the heavier weight version, for the Audi vehicles. So if you're just keeping your car stock or Stage 1, and you don't drive it too hard, and you live in a relatively cool climate, 020 is going to be fine. If once you go Stage 3 or you feel like you're really pushing it in hot weather, then definitely bump up to 540. But I think at this point, that's just a good suggestion from us. We don't have any proof or evidence to say that you'll have any kind of problem with 020. So I wouldn't stress too much.
We haven't seen any issues. It's just one of those
it's what you do.
It's what you do. You're right. When you're making more power, heavier load, higher operating conditions.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys get the B9s to shift into 8th gear in sport mode in auto?
We can. Usually you're not in 8th gear in sport mode. Generally, that's a comfort thing.
8th gear. I mean, if you want to be in 8th gear, you should drive in comfort.
Yeah, just put it in manual or comfort. But
and from a conceptual standpoint, if you're in sport mode, you want the engine typically at one lower gear than you would be in comfort to add that responsiveness. So if you're cruising on the freeway in 7th gear, sport mode is going to dictate that you don't ever go to 8th gear because you want to be higher in the power band for that acceleration and responsiveness. The idea of sport mode is the engine's never lugging. The engine is always in the power band, ready to accelerate, ready to respond. So there's no cruising gear when it comes to sport. So yeah, just click back into comfort, or like Nate said, just drive around in manual mode if he wants. I don't really like doing that, so I can see why you kind of want you want your cake and eat it too. But sporty means sport.
Yep.
Do I get a Mark 8 Golf R or a GR Corolla Circuit Edition as my fun car? Well, I don't know what a
we're not on the Corolla.
I don't know what a Gricola is.
A Gricola.
But Golf R's are fucking badass and hilariously fun and fast and sexy.
Yep.
I don't think anyone wants to have sex with anyone driving a Corolla. So maybe something to keep in mind there. Golf R for sure. You're going to be off the charts riz. Hello, I'm from Jamaica, and I bought an S3AY. It had a Gen 3 engine, though. Do you guys offer any Stage 1 tunes for this variant?
Oh, that's the one.
This is the weird
we
thing.
don't currently. Yeah, that was kind of
Racingline. I think Racingline.
Racingline might have some stuff ready to go. but no, that got its own ECU, kind of its own intermediate tuning package.
I would recommend looking at Racingline tunes. That I do believe they released a tune for this, which was a weird.
It is. It's a newer ECU, but the old style calibration.
Basically, a Mark 8
kind of grafted in. It's a little strange. It's
a Gen 4 car and management system with Gen 3 motor. It's weird, but I think they did that.
Yep.
Otherwise, enjoy Jamaica.
Yeah,
wonderful. Went there once. I just got a brand new 2024 Audi S3, looking to tune it, and was looking to tune with you guys. Why would you recommend 0 through 4 over another company? It's another question we answer every week. We need to... Hey, Sean, can you just link them to one of the many times we've responded to this? I mean, real quick, 034 is currently our belief and our assertion is that we provide the most OEM-like performance tuning on the market, where we do not fudge any of the calibration factors. We do not use band-aids or workarounds. We re-engineer the programming inside the ECU just as if Audi themselves or Bosch or whoever it was releasing a high-performance tune to take advantage of the extra headroom in the turbocharger system on the vehicle. We stand behind our products. We've been tuning and calibrating factory ECUs since for 15 years now. And we were one of the first to come to market with the latest generation of 8Y S3 tunes. Our power and performance is going to stack up to anything on the market. However, our margin of safety, the safety features built in, are going to be just like factory and OEM. And we're here every week to answer all your questions or concerns. And we have a whole tuning support staff that does log reviews. We stand behind our products with a 30-day money-back guarantee. For the S3, we have hundreds and hundreds of happy customers running that tuning. So we'd love to help you out. If you'd like, you can email us, and we'd be happy to chat with you more. Let's see. Any plans on making a better metal water pump for the B9 S4 S5 instead of the OE plastic design? We've talked about this, but I think that OE did an update, right?
I think the latest rev stuff has been pretty solid.
Yeah,
so we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I don't think it's
not a super attractive investment for us if everyone's just going to go with the Audi one, but I think we're looking into it. If there was an ability for us to add anything to that product, we would definitely do it.
Yeah, and Sean brought up a good point. It's not the impeller that's the problem. It's not the actual pumping unit. It's this basically a piston that moves back and forth within there to engage and disengage the flow path, essentially.
Yeah.
That starts leaking and weeping into the vacuum system that actuates it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's been resolved on all of the ones that have been replaced. I don't think we've had to do more than one.
Pretty sure my Mark 7 GTI had a rear main seal leak. What are the chances the clutch has been damaged due to an oil leak? Any other service I should tackle getting in there?
Generally, you'll feel like the clutch will show signs of it's getting oil contamination.
Yeah, I doubt it. That's not usually something I've seen. Typically, the oil will seep out from the seal and drain down behind the flywheel. And then you'll see it dripping under the car. It would be kind of difficult for the oil to get up and around. And typically, it's not like the oil leak's not like spraying out. But even if it was, it would be hitting the back of the flywheel. So I doubt it. I think you're just going to want to thoroughly clean the flywheel and inspect the clutch. Worst case scenario, you'd need a new disc, which is cheap. The pressure plate wouldn't be affected. But like Nate said, if your clutch is currently functioning well...
Yeah, I mean, if it's been slipping and you've been roasting the thing, then you'll probably just want to put a fresh setup in there.
If it had oil on it, you definitely know. So once you're in there, again, I would service your clutch anyway. So I think unless you just changed it, I would put in a new clutch because you don't have to do that again in 2 more years. definitely check out our rear main seal product. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot else. I mean, you could check out things like the transmission mounts and inspect those.
Oh, the while you're in there?
Yeah, the while you're in there stuff.
No.
Yeah, the dogbone
Yeah, it's all the same,
and
all
that
the
stuff's
pixels.
all in there. You could look at doing, you know, our subframe locking collars while you're in there. So yeah, definitely. Also, you know, consult with a reputable shop if you're working with somebody. S4 B8 supercharger flap is showing stuck shut and stuck open, but flap isn't having any issues. Any idea what's wrong?
It could be a number of things. The first thing that comes to mind, if it's, well, is it bank specific? Are you getting code for bank 1, bank 2? If it's just one bank, then yeah, I don't know what diagnosis you've done to know that it's operating fine. If it moves freely, or you've done some output tests, but it could be a crack in a vacuum line. It could be that if it's both banks and they're both acting up, there's 3 solenoids in the back of the intake manifold that unfortunately all kind of plumb almost together in the same. So it's super easy to kind of mix that plumbing up and or the connectors up. I've seen that before, where you get it on like the N80 circuit versus the flap circuit, and it opens and closes at all the wrong times. The ECU thinks it's stuck either way. So that's it's usually a vacuum routing problem if it's truly not stuck and your you know, flaps are able to move each way. So I would try and trace that back. It's kind of a pain. You kind of get in there with a hand vacuum pump to really trace down what's going where and make sure that they're holding vacuum and that kind of thing.
If I get a cold air intake for an otherwise stock C7.5 A7, do I need a tune? No. Generally, you can install a high flow intake on any of these cars. The problem is that you won't really realize the benefit of the increased flow until you tune or calibrate the ECU. And the reason for this is the factory ECU isn't supporting a certain amount of airflow coming into the engine. The factory ECU is targeting a certain torque output. And so that's why the tuning strategy in these ECUs is referred to as a torque request. So when you push your throttle pedal, you're requesting a certain amount of torque from the ECU. And so the ECU will deliver that torque regardless of the airflow capabilities. Older ECUs, like say from the 90s and earlier, even the early 2000s, they would supply, if more air came into the engine, they would supply more fuel and timing to support that airflow. But these newer ECUs are much more advanced, and certainly modern stuff like your C7. So what you'll find is you can put a cold air intake or a high flow intake on that vehicle, and you wouldn't see any real power gain until you go in and open up the ECU tuning parameters and you reprogram the torque request to request more torque. And in that case, the ECU will make as much power as possible with that given airflow level. And I think we might be one of the only tuning companies that's honest about that. A lot of tuning companies make it sound like if you just slap at any of their intakes on any car,
You get all
get
power
this
in.
power, and it's just not. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you think, it's just not true.
Yeah, it depends on how how well the torque model is done inside the ECU. It can often go both ways. Sometimes we've seen this where they're over. It's again, it's all math based, so it's trying to develop a torque number based off all of its parameters. But we found there's some instances where as you get hotter and hotter and hotter, the engine will actually make a little more power just because they were over aggressive, you could say, on the expected output of torque for a given air temperature, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a tricky land of math problems, unfortunately, to know what you're going to end up with. But no, you shouldn't have any problem just putting an intake on there and getting a more efficient, power output.
Yeah. What would cause bogging on a TT-A10 with all supporting mods?
I don't know what that means.
There's no way
That's not really a definitive thing. We don't have any reports of bogging. There's going to be a little more turbo lag. Maybe that's what you're saying.
Well, it could be something wrong.
There might be something wrong. Correct. Yes, but if
you're on our tuning, definitely do a log review. be careful driving the car.
Yeah. Yeah, if
because
you think
obviously-
something's not right.
Yeah, unless you're, like Nate said, unless you're just going at 1500 RPM and flooring it and expecting the thing to just take off, which it's not going to do, because it's not a 8-liter V8. But yeah, there should be no bogging once you're above like 3500 RPM. It should be like
Get up and go.
like a sexually assaulted ape at that point, for sure. B9 hybrid turbo stock cat, a dream or reality one day?
It'll
It's
be
not a
reality.
dream, but it's maybe like lucid dreaming right now, you know, because it's not quite available, though it will be. But no, it is something that we're working on and something that we want to do. We fully desire and intend to support factory Cali converter.
Yep.
Especially given the regulatory environments and also the fact that the factory cats actually flow a lot.
Yep.
More than they ever have in the past. So it's a good time to be doing that. And in most cases, we do with the stage 3 stuff. That's something.
Yep.
I've been debating coilovers versus lowering springs. Which would you recommend for the daily driver, occasional track day? B8, S4. Which brands would you go with? Okay, so I just want to be full transparency. We are 034 Motorsport. So I don't know if you think you were asking this question of a very independent, unbiased source.
We have a tilt towards this style.
We are ridiculously biased. However, we can also support it and back it up. But and Nate and I answer this question a lot. It gets answered quite often. For sure, without question, I would recommend our Dynamic Plus lowering springs. And we discuss this quite often, but we literally design those springs exactly for someone like you who wants to still have comfort on the street, high performance driving on the street, and have something that will hold up to track days. Our springs are a great option for that. Other brand springs on the market, I don't know what they do for engineering and validation, but most of the ones we've tested, most of them, they're typically too low, too stiff, and they don't ride well. They're crashy, and they actually hurt the handling of the car. The only benefit is maybe it's a little bit lower, so it could possibly look cooler if you're into that. The issue with the nice thing about coilovers is they're typically height adjustable, so that means you can tailor the ride height. Sometimes, usually, the shocks are not designed for the full range of height adjustability, which means you can lower the vehicle outside of the range at which the shock absorber for that coilover was designed for. But if you keep
or go too high,
or too high,
the shock, the travel is very limited, and you're basically topping out the shock a bunch.
I didn't mention that because I don't know if I've
maybe
once or twice.
We had somebody install a kit, an aftermarket kit here. We
S4?
No, it was different, but same thing as a coilover. So I mean, it's just the way it was designed. It wanted the vehicle to be slammed.
Yeah. And then if once you get into coilovers that have adjustable dampers, the chance of you getting those damping settings right to give the optimal level of damping like the factory dampers already have is really, really low. So, and also our springs are about 1/10 the price of a coilover, a competitive coilover. I mean, there's cheaper ones on the market, but a lot of the cheaper ones, like these kind of, I don't want to badmouth any brands, but I mean typically these coilovers that are from like $600 to $1,500, a lot of them are not good. I think there's some decent stuff by like H&R and Bilstein. You know, they have like kind of drop-in street coilovers. But again, even that's 5 times the cost of our lowering springs, which will give you just as good or better performance. So we could easily release coilovers, and we still might at some points, but every time we talk about it and we have this conversation that I'm having with you, it's like, can we really offer any improvement over something that's 5-10 times the price? And the answer is almost always no. And it's just kind of why would we do that? You know, let's continue to invest in our springs, which are frankly the best option for customers out there. Hello guys, can you go through all the premature parts change and service you would do on a 90,000 mile 2015 3-liter TFSI Q5 before stage 1? I already ordered your carbon intake. Cheers and thank you. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't stress too much about it. Make sure that you've done all your factory service. But I'd say by far the number one thing that we're seeing is injectors on these cars.
Yeah, at that age at 90K, you definitely want to get in there and just for peace of mind, stock even would before without any tune, get some fresh injectors in there.
Something we talk about, the factory tune and the factory vehicle can get away with injectors that are partially clogged because there's a lot of headroom built into the factory fuel system. But once you start going stage 1, stage 2, and you start pushing it, you quickly, we as a tuning company use up all that headroom. And so it could be at some point that the new level of tuned headroom in the fuel system is higher than your clogged injector. And so at that point now you're going to be running lean and causing problems. So I don't know. It's you could use an analogy that if someone was going to walk slowly places, they could wear some shitty old shoes that have holes in them. But if you're going to run a marathon, you need some good high quality shoes because you're pushing everything to, into a higher level of performance. So definitely replace your injectors, check your PCV system for leaks.
Yep.
I don't know if I'd say to go so far as to start replacing PCV stuff, but if it was cheap,
it's one of those things. If you're in there, you're doing injectors, you're 90% of the way there. The PCV is like one more layer under that.
And you can buy the whole unit.
I mean,
place.
they're on the same.
They're on well, no, because you do the water pipe, you got to buy that too. So there's one more thing you got to pull, but another 15 minutes of work. So
and intercooler cores on these are a problem. You can pull them out and inspect them.
Yeah, make sure there's no crusty coolant usually in the ports if they're starting to leak.
You'll see some evidence of like evaporation of coolant and some deposits. They're not that expensive.
If you can get them, the supply chain kind of comes and goes in those. But
when they're available, they're like pretty cheap. So carbon cleaning is always a good idea, and that should be done every 50,000-60,000 miles anyways. You could try pulling your cats and inspecting them. It's a lot of work just for an inspection. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but
a lot of guys will pull the front sensor and stick a scope in.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
Yeah, pulling them off entirely. So that's all.
But if they're going bad, you'll feel it, or you'll see it in the logs and things like that too. And then the water pump and thermostat on those cars is an Achilles heel on those.
Yes,
but I think
somebody's asking, talking about servicing packages and the upgrades on the horizon. We're working on some stuff. We do not have anything finalized at this time.
Nothing's been released, but we're testing and evaluating a lot of different options. All right, this one's for you, Nate. What are some challenges you faced with deploying tunes through SPI? Any roadmap items to improve deployment time from development to production?
We kind of developed our whole ecosystem knowing that we were going to be doing a mobile platform from the start. So we're very fortunate in the way we kind of architected the whole server and tuning platform, in that we use the exact same software, the same code, everything is the same and flashes with the same algorithms, the same lines of code will flash these cars from a Windows laptop, an Android phone, an iOS device, a MacBook. It's all the exact same code. So there's zero extra delay or effort necessarily between launching a platform on iOS or Android or Windows. What we're doing right now is bringing that even more into a homogeneous state, where the Windows app is currently what's getting the updates. And the Windows app itself is now a little behind the development curve, just the way things were launched and the way the apps are kind of built. The actual GUI side of it. So that soon will be getting updates to be much more in line with what the mobile experience is like, as far as the extra features we have now with mobile. So the logging and the diagnostics and the added, nice to haves that are in the mobile side. So it's going to be pretty much an identical experience very soon across, almost every platform you can think of. The other challenges with the mobile is just, we strive to make it as obviously as stable as possible. When you've got somebody not tethered to a car, they've got a phone that has, Instagram, Facebook, all these other distractions on it. We really have to think about what happens when that person inevitably forgets they're in the middle of flashing, the car and gets up and walks away with it, or takes a phone call, or it goes into some background process. So we had to, from the beginning, kind of offload a lot of that onto the cable itself. Does a lot of heavy lifting for the actual transfer to the ECU. So there's just some stuff like that to trying to accommodate as many situations as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we still get people that manage to do really strange outside of the scope things while they're flashing the car.
What modifications are you developing for B9 S4 that helps us for track driving, drag racing, and not street density? Yeah, so we are on the cusp of releasing our 034 Motorsport track and street sport billet motor mounts. If you want to just get an idea what they look like, you could go look at like the B8 S4 motor mounts. They're going to be similar form factor. The B9 has an extra billet aluminum support brace that comes down to the factory locating position. And we showed these off a few weeks ago. So I don't know what the release date is, but it should be very soon.
Oh, I forgot we actually showed those.
Yeah. So I've driven both in one in our. I drove the street density in our S4 and the track density in the RS5, and the amount of NVH is actually shockingly low for what it is.
I really like them in my B8 S4.
Yeah, I know you've always liked them. I would say it's similar. It's not much worse than that. The track ones in the RS5, you can feel it and hear it all the time, but it's not horrible. I would say like it's way worse than like a Daza, TTRS or RS3.
Mm-hmm.
Much more noticeable in those with that 5 cylinders. Much more thrashy, not as smooth of a motor. But these V6s are so smooth and balanced.
Yeah, a lot of it's the way they mount too. So the like the rear dogbone mount, I feel carries a lot of that noise. So the more buzzing you get, it's kind of like right under your seat.
Yeah.
But
the street density mount is a very substantial stiff mount. I mean, they advertise it as being indestructible, and the NVH, I could live with it. It's not. It's definitely not like the factory mount or our street density mount, but it's not bad at all. And if you're like a stage 3 customer who's looking for great performance but doesn't want to completely like feel the NVH, I would recommend them. So they're coming soon. I think we're just waiting for the production to finish.
Top question.
What about watching porn while flashing via mobile? Did any of you test that one out, Javad? No, I didn't happen to be doing both at the same time, unfortunately. But you could get distracted.
I mean, there's going to be more Q7 flashing coming soon, so there's a lot more space.
Yeah, just leave a little blood in the head for the tuning, because you gotta close it out and make sure it flashed right and stuff like that. So, maybe I live under a rock, but did the pricing for your dogbone inserts go up? Why is that? So they did not raise. However, we've been doing this for a long time, and over the years, we'll see that the way we did something, we should have done it differently in the past. And so, as a company overall, I would say we do a really good job of pairing our parts with hardware that you need to do the installation. Because what's the point of buying some motor mounts if then you have to go to the dealer and buy all the hardware and you didn't know? So it's inconvenient. So after selling our inserts separately for years and the hardware separately for years, we have now combined them. And I think in many cases we've actually lowered the price, so that the total number is more expensive. But
if you were, you're
cheaper than
you were able to see a lower number to see just a piece of what you needed on there.
Yeah. So, so it represents a better value than we've been able to offer in the past, and in some cases we've changed to non-stretch aftermarket hardware. But for example, in this case of this Volkswagen application, like a MQB type application, we are offering the factory stretch bolts. So these are technically one-time use, but they can be anecdotally, casually speaking, you could reuse them a couple times. And then B8 and B9 we upgraded to non-stretch grade 12.9.
Yep.
So yeah, the prices haven't gone up. However, you're just getting everything you need, and you can still buy the bolts separately on the website. But you're gonna need bolts. So, and I don't think that's something you can get from a lot of other places. So you're gonna have to buy stuff separately. I was asking about C7 S6 tuning. I mean, definitely something we're working on and we will release, but it's not. It's high on the priority.
It's not up there on the priority list.
B9.5 RS5 Stg1 plus E85. When launched, the car gives maximum power. Does it also give maximum power when shifted manually as you row through the gears?
It does, yes. You're going to get the same power up, but what you're feeling is the difference in the shift characteristic. So when that goes from like a 1-2 shift, 2-3 shift, from a launch, it's not doing, or it's doing a very minimal torque reduction from the engine. So your transmission is just basically jumping to the next gear without any kind of torque reduction on the engine. Normally, when it shifts, you'll get the transmission says, "Hey, engine, I'm shifting. Please pull that back to power. Let me just do my thing." And then I'll tell you when you can give it back for the next gear. It's still really fast. We're talking like tens of milliseconds, but that's the difference you feel where you don't have the that lurch on the shift is basically the inertia within the motor being pulled down to the RPM of the next gear versus the engine doing a torque reduction, dropping down to the next gear, and then smoothly supplying the power. So that's the difference. And we're going to be having, you'll see soon, there'll be more transmission calibration options up there. Where we're doing what's called the rolling AMAX, where you're going to get a lot more of that on a full throttle acceleration, like in sport mode, for instance, where it'll be that style of acceleration because your foot's in it. We know you want to get going. So yeah, there's going to be some more options coming for getting that kind of a shift without having to launch it.
Yep. That kind of parlays into this next question. What's your roadmap for B9 3-liter tuning? So we have some really cool updates coming for Stage 2 and Stage 3 TCUs.
Yeah.
As Nate said, it implements a rolling climax, which just means
that's right. Rolling climax. Sorry, I didn't put the marketing words in it.
Yeah, rolling climax, which just means that you can get climax from a rolling start as opposed to a stationary launch. I have driven and tested this, and it's insane. I think you guys know I don't usually overstate stuff. I don't think I do.
No.
And the type of shifting that you can experience now, it's like what we did for the B8 KLi-MAX, but it's just a whole new level with the ZF automatically shifted
and
transmission.
We need to be clear too. It's not just the wide open throttle stuff. It's all the shift points, the shift tables, the timings, the pressures. It's been gone through again with a whole new round of refinement from where we were before.
It's the most refined, fastest space age shift I've ever experienced. I've never driven a transmission that shifts like that. I've driven transmissions that shift really fast, that bang into gear. But this is just, it's surgical. It's fast, surgical, smooth. In fact, it was at one point too smooth, and we kind of had to bring it back a little bit just so you kind of felt like there was a shift happening, and you could hear it a little bit too on the motor. But we've gone in deep into the TCU programming and done things that nobody else has done. I'm very, very excited to bring this to market. So not going to say too much more, but I wanted to put a little hype out there. It's as good as I'm saying, and if you're currently on our tuning, congratulations, you'll get this free update.
Yep.
And for free, you can have the best shifting, definitely the best shifting Audi Volkswagen tune on the market. I don't know what BMW tuners are doing and if they're getting this kind of performance out of their TCUs, but I think we've done something pretty amazing. I'm really excited to release it. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
And if you are in the B9 market and you haven't seen the outpouring of excitement and enthusiasm over our KLi-MAX tunes in the B8 market, you'll see that in B9 coming. And if you're not on our tuning, I think you'll be hearing about it. And we do have a switching discount when you're ready.
Yep.
Will you be doing dual pulley for CREC?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will. And you don't necessarily need to, but we'll also be offering all of our, crank pulley. This is all about the ratio.
Yeah, it's whatever ratio you end up with. But yeah, you will want to go to ideally a fixed supercharger clutch at that point too. It does put quite a lot of strain on the stock clutch.
Yeah, no, that's going to be an essay. So we have the clutch delete. It's now.
Yep, that's kind of why you haven't seen a lot of activity from us, at least on that front.
And we are releasing a smaller crank pulley, supercharger pulley as well. So that's coming with the 4-bolt. It's not a press on like the V8.
Yeah, we needed to get that clutch delete done first to kind of support all this stuff.
Yeah, but lots of fun stuff coming for CREC.
Yep.
I think we did that top one. When are TCU tunes expected to be coming out for B9.5 23 plus RS5?
As soon as we can. We do not have a ETA on that.
Nobody has it.
Nobody's got it yet. We talked about this. Maybe we can link. We did kind of a breakdown of. It's not just a matter of deciding to do it. It's a whole other effort of.
I think it was last week.
I know we did. We did a long discussion of it a month or two ago. It's not just it's setting aside time and doing it. It's a whole reverse engineering and security cracking effort that is underway. But it's one of those things you basically don't have a known discrete amount of work ahead of you. So as soon as it's done and reliable, we will get it up as quick as we can.
Someone says, "Have I told you lately that I love you?"
Wow.
It says, I tuned over a year ago and still love every moment in my B9.5 S4. E85 Stg1 ECU and Stage 2 TCU is plenty for this dadmobile. Awesome. 034 is the go. Glad to hear. Thanks for the positive feedback.
Do you know who that is? Who it's from? It's from your favorite YouTuber,
Midlife.
Oh, Midlife.
Yeah, I was just thinking we got to put the names more in these so we can give.
Yeah.
Kind of like who.
It's kind of nice not knowing because then I can just.
You can go
unbiased, but no, it's also good. Well, I'm glad you're happy, buddy. We appreciate all the enthusiasm. We won't tell your wife, don't worry.
Secret safe.
MK8 GTI. Can I use a high torque stage 1 on a stock TCU?
You can. It's just going to cap at basically the same power as our reduced torque, but it's going to do it in a more reactive way, you could say, because the ECU is going to be like, hey, I'm going to make a bunch of torque, and TCU is like, nope, and takes the power back out. So if you want the best, smoothest experience, we recommend running the low torque file. It's basically going to really kind of ride that line of where the TCU is totally cool with what's going on, and it's not going to try and do any reductions, and you'll be making essentially the same power. So there's a chance you could make a smidge more by completely railing against that TCU limiter, but it's it's basically negligible between the two. So we recommend the low output one. You're going to get the most consistent experience with that.
Yeah. Lots of people asking about B9.5 PCV updates. Not too much to say as far as we're not ready to release it yet. However, it is in manufacturing. There's a lot of pieces to it, but the good news is we've been doing long-term testing on our final current design, and it's working perfectly. This will be a check valve system that can hold 40-50 psi, designed to hold that much boost. So yeah, be very, very good. Just hang in there. I really wanted to get it to market sooner, but it wasn't quite as simple as it seemed initially, and we've gone through a few different iterations and updates to get to the final design. We will be offering a catch can kit and just the hose itself as well.
Yeah, it's not the simplest flow path and flow volumes and stuff to really emulate the intent of the stock hoses while also being a more robust solution.
There was a question about Racingline springs. Did that one get answered?
I think somebody might have read between the lines or something on when we were talking about springs between the different platforms. They were saying, so you don't recommend Racingline or something.
It's not. I honestly haven't spent a lot of time on most Racingline springs, so I can't speak to how well or how they operate or function. I can't say Racingline is connected to us. They're a very reputable company with good engineering, but we don't. They do their own spring.
Yeah, we don't go through and like vet each other's products and whatnot.
Well, it's by design because they have their own perspective, being a company operating out of Europe, and we have our own operating here out of the U.S.
Yeah.
So not to say that 034 springs wouldn't work well in the UK or vice versa, but we are different companies with our own identities, and we want to keep it that way. So we continue to, like, would we be able to make more money and
if we
cut costs
if
we just shared it all?
Yeah,
we would be, but that's not the goal here. The goal is to continue to provide market-leading products that customers love, and they've gotten good results with theirs, and so we do it separately. Should you buy a 034 spring? Absolutely. That's what I'm going to say, because I know what's on our springs. I know the level of effort we put into designing and engineering them. And I personally will guarantee your happiness, but I'm not here to sell anyone else's springs. And I don't really know that much about, there's 40 spring options on the market for any given car, so.
And we spend all of our time really honing and developing and testing our products versus having all this extra time then to go through and validate and sign off on everything else that's out there.
Any front shock mount for the A4 B9, and we've looked at this one. There really isn't one. There's kind of this aluminum cap that the spring sits in, and there's just a tiny bit of like vulcanized rubber in there. So I don't think we will, because there's just not much of a product there.
So you're saying just the OEs?
The OE is basically, we could go in there and stiffen up the rubber, but it would be a really expensive part, and I don't think there would be any difference. And again, our motto is substance. So when we're looking at an application, we're asking, what can we do to improve this? How do we make this better? How do we give the customer a benefit that they don't already have? And if we can't answer that, then we typically don't do the product. Because we want to be able to stand up here every week and say, definitely buy this product. Here's what it does. Here's why you want it. And if it's just like, well, we made a thing that's stiffer that doesn't do anything, then that's a tough sell for me. I don't want to be up here trying to convince people to buy stuff like that.
Yep.
So I don't think we will, but yeah, whenever there's an opportunity to improve, we will. What spacers do I need to run on the wheel that's behind you with a set of 18Z on a B5 S4? So an 18 by 8.5 would need approximately a 10 mil spacer, according to our market research team. Are you going to release more colors of the ZTF Forged wheels? Yes, we will. We have plans to do that. I don't have a release date for that, but the idea is to bring them to market. There's 3 other colors. The satin black, the hyper silver, and bronze.
Yeah, keep in mind, if you want some crazy or very unique color, you're going to be there's lots of wheel refinishing options out there to get powder coated or painted. So.
Yeah, we're just not the company that's going to offer 75 colors that sound like different fruits. That's probably not something we're going to do. When are you releasing the B9 RS5 turbo inlet? I don't have a release date for that, but it is in manufacturing.
Unique in those updates.
Yeah, it's in manufacturing. So I feel like we answer the CarPlay like 3 times a week.
Yep, somebody's asking about CarPlay. We talked about it previously, but there's a limited amount of things and how quickly you can show them on those displays for both CarPlay and Android Auto. So
yeah,
we do want to implement it, but it'll probably be more of a maybe a tune selector and again, this is all just hypothetical, but tune selector and maybe like a fault code diagnostics interface more than anything. Seeing like real-time streaming gauges and stuff is probably not going to be feasible with with what we are allowed to do on CarPlay systems.
Yeah. Is it normal my pops go away on my Stage1 B9 S4 when it gets hot? If yes, what can I do to prevent it?
Yeah, if you're talking like you're doing a bunch of like, high load stuff, you're on track, or you're doing a lot of sustained stuff, and like you said, your car's getting hot, yes, it is normal. We will remove, or not remove, but we will tailor the amount of overrun crackle based on exhaust gas temperatures for one, and there's other stuff that'll turn it off, but that's going to be the one that's impacted the most.
Turning it off is part of the safety strategy.
Yeah, so we don't want to introduce any more heat into the exhaust unnecessarily if we don't need to, or if we're at a point where we're like, okay, it's hot enough, we don't want to artificially increase it even more for no performance reasons. So yes, it'll start waning off as temps come up.
So if it stops working, you're welcome.
Yeah, there's a reason
protecting you from your pops and bangs.
Yes, the system temperatures are just higher than we want to run any more pops and bangs through it.
Delay in launch with B8.5 using ALC. When letting off brake, there's about half a second delay. Hard to race another person with this. Any workarounds?
It's not a half second. I do know what you're talking about, but it's kind of the nature of coming off of a rev limit essentially, and then getting the ECU to engage the clutches in a controlled way to get it off the line. The characteristics a little different depending on the different launch modes. You can try it in soft versus ALC versus trying an upswing method. They all launch a little bit different because of what the ECU has to do or the TCU has to do to manage the clutch rates. So there's some other methods out there, but it gets tricky because the ALC is definitely the most consistent. But if you're doing like head-to-head stuff, or you've got some reaction time thing that's, none of the Audi launch controls are really meant for that. Get you off the line and get you moving, but they're not a like optimized, pro staging tree driver launching system.
Yeah, and if you're putting yourself in that position, then I think some practice and getting good at predicting, accounting for that.
Yeah.
But like Nate said, it just goes with the territory with the DSG, and it is probably shorter than you think.
Yeah, half second's actually quite a long time.
That's an eternity.
But no, I do know what the delay. It's not like instant as soon as your foot comes off.
Yeah.
And I get that, but yeah, it's one of the dynamics of the TCU to manage all that instant torque and get the clutches released or clutches engaged.
So I'm saying that you should explain and publish that you don't give support to GPF-equipped cars for Stage 2 and Stage 3. We do on our product pages. Maybe there was a time when we didn't, but I believe it's pretty clear at this point. Just bought the 034 dynamic lowering springs for my 2019 S3. What should I buy next to get better handling? I'd say definitely sway bars.
Sway bars, what I was going to say too.
Yeah, do our sway bar kit in conjunction with the springs, and you should consider the rear trailing arms.
Yeah,
that package, and then our camber caster plates. That's a really, really powerful, good handling setup. Budget it out however you want, but definitely sway bars next, and then I would recommend going through the catalog, not because, of course, we would sell you more stuff, which is always nice, but the products are there for a reason, and they all work together really nicely. We got 5 minutes. Is there changes to the drive modes on the new B8.5 KLi-MAX files? My 2019 S5 2015 S5 gives me 7th gear on the highway and eventually changes the shift points to comfort mode while still in dynamic.
So these TCUs have a range of shift points. There's not a shift point for comfort and a shift point for dynamic. There's also a blend of a couple of levels of shifting that it blends constantly between them. So generally when you're like at a state where you're just cruising at that point, it'll come down into basically the driver, what do they call it? The driver, it's basically a driver charisma, but basically a driver level. You get 100% to 0%. And it'll come down as you're cruising and in light load for a longer period of time. And those shift points will come down with it to some extent. And you'll get a little bit different shifting characteristic. It's not fully down to comfort levels, but it's just kind of, you get these like blended shift points depending on how you're driving, what mode you're in. And that's the gist of it. So it'll move around a little bit. how they're driving it.
Someone's asking about an update on MQB extended tie rods. I don't mind answering this because they are coming. They're in manufacturing. We've been testing them on various test cars in our fleet. They work wonderfully. They do allow you to adjust your toe with or lower control arms or any kind of extended ball joint applications. They don't really take into account much for bump steer. We made a small adjustment for bump steer in them, but the factory design just simply doesn't allow because there's just no room to move the tie rod because it's on which side of the knuckle it's on. In order to account for bump steer, you start running into the knuckle. So there's actually another company on the market that sells something that they claim adjusts bump steer, but it just does. You can change like 1 millimeter of bump steer. It's not enough to really matter. So we don't currently have a good solution for that, but bump steer is not the end all. The car will still be very fast and handle very good, even with a little suboptimal bump steer.
Mm-hmm.
Will the ZF updates for B9 also be applied to the earlier ZFs found in C7s and B8.5 SQ5?
Yes, there is a bunch of updates coming as well. I'm not going to say they're going to be exactly the same right now because it's two different platforms entirely, and the TCUs are different and have some different software architectures in there. But yeah, we've got a lot of AL551. That's the previous generation transmission updates coming as well.
Mm-hmm. Does a high flow cat make much more power than a catless test pipe?
It's very platform dependent on where power levels and things land, but no.
Well, the point of a high flow cat is not to make more power than a test pipe.
Right.
So arguably a high flow cat makes less power than a test pipe. In practice, we haven't really seen that at the kind of applications and power levels that we run. What we see is our high flow racing cats flow or make the same amount of power as a test pipe. And the problem with a test pipe is, one, it's egregiously illegal. It releases all the pollution possible from an engine. It will leave black soot all over the back of your car. You'll be able to smell it when you're stopped or idling, or even under certain driving conditions, you'll be able to smell your exhaust. It's just noxious. So it's a pretty backwards solution for like a modern emission controlled vehicle. So all of our high flow racing cats, even though they flow higher, they still meet emission standards from like 10, 15 years ago.
Or better in some
and better
situations.
They're clean, environmentally friendly devices that we use technology and engineering to get more flow out of without creating a lot of pollution. In fact, it's a marginal small amount. And those are still only for racing applications. Mm-hmm. But, in general, we recommend customers stick with stock cats and stock emissions components to avoid the issues that come with being non-compliant. And these days, the differences are pretty small. Have you considered an upgraded radiator for the B9 S5, more coolant to keep the temps lower? Yes, we are working on a full suite, a host of cooling products, not just the main radiator, but additional radiators, auxiliary radiators, things like that. Upgrading the existing radiators to be thicker and more efficient. So I would say keep your eye out in the next 6 to 12 months. We will have a lot of B9 platform cooling products hit the market. All right, I think we have time for one more. Thoughts on E85 pump differences, Pearson fuels versus propel?
Almost all of the stuff around us is propel.
And it's amazing.
It's been super consistent. We've had zero issues with it.
Yeah.
I can't speak to any other brands, honestly, just because we're so not enveloped in propel stations.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I always say about fuel. It's a highly regulated, highly precisely manufactured product. Like the E85 you get from a pump is like space age manufacturing compared to like going to McDonald's, which seems really consistent, right? But like
I don't know.
But
It's probably
anything
pretty space age these days to get the dollar down.
But I'm just saying, if you think something like a McDonald's is consistent or a Starbucks is consistent, these fuels are manufactured with substantially more science and engineering involved. So I wouldn't worry about it. I would just have your E85 content gauge, and whenever you fill up, no matter where it is, just verify that you've actually gotten more than E60, E65. But I don't think you're going to notice. There's just not, I think there's a lot of perceived quality between different types of fuel, which is really driven by gasoline companies advertising and trying to, gasoline is a commodity. It's manufactured and sold and regulated as a commodity. We fight wars over gasoline. It's not like we invaded a country because Chevron was better than, BP or whatever. So it's all good fuel. Just with the 85, it's easy. Just check the content. But I've rarely ever seen an issue with gasoline.
Nothing around here.
Yeah. E85, you can get really low E85 content. That's why it's important.
A lot of times when you're in environments that do winter blends and change things up a bunch. Here it's super consistent. We had one gas station that just mixed up their tanks, but that's nothing to do with the 85. That's a flub on the operator.
Someone's asking, with our lowering springs, do we recommend a different shock that is better suited to a lower ride? Their shop said their shocks were leaking. No, our springs do not cause the factory shocks to go bad. Your shop is wrong. We have a lot of data.
If they're trying to conflate that it's one, that's a cause for it.
The factory shocks can go bad. That has nothing to do with our springs. And so I would strongly recommend simply replacing your factory shocks with new factory shocks.
We're not outside of their range where we found they operate very efficiently. All of the bump stops, all of the limitations are all in place still. There's no extra travel or load or anything else on them.
In fact, our main criteria designing these springs is to make the springs even more compatible with the factory shocks. So there is a little bit of lowering, but it's well within the shock travel and range. So it makes sense why a shop would just spit that out, but they have no evidence of that, and it's not true. So
it would be, we would have a lot of issues if our springs were chewing up shocks.
Yeah. Thousands and thousands of cars would have blown shocks. I don't know. Let's do one last one. Will the TCU tune fix my DSG shifting a little rough B8 S4?
Not necessarily. That's a difficult one to answer. It shouldn't be rough. I mean, I don't know what you're tuned with now, if you're tuned with our stuff or not. It shouldn't be rough now. A lot of people have had good luck if it's not super smooth doing adaptions, clutch adaptions, or DSG. They're called kiss point adaptions, but it shouldn't be rough now on our software. The new stuff is more refined, so it might smooth it out even a little more. So
it's possible, but to be clear, our tune isn't designed to fix anything, right? So this would be like going to an amusement park and saying, "Hey, if I ride on this roller coaster, will I not feel sick anymore?" Roller coaster is designed to make you feel like you're having fun, and the doctor can address any kind of health issues you have. So if you have a fundamental health issue with your TCU or vehicle, you need to address that. Our TCU tune cannot fix other problems. Even if we wanted it to, it's impossible because the TCU can't fix itself. We can only change the way the car shifts and make it more fun or exciting or faster for you.
The base characteristics and how it does the shift. But if there's an issue, that can't be resolved.
It's possible that you don't feel like the factory TCU shifts smoothly, and we do remap all the shifting, and we do change the character at how the vehicle shifts. So it's possible that you'll I think most of our customers like the way our TCU tune shifts compared to the Audi tune, which isn't as smooth as it should be. But I just want to be clear that if there's something wrong, you need to address that separately. Okay. All right. I think we're out of time. So we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.